Welcome to Wild Turkey Science, a podcast made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow. I'm Dr. Marcus Lashley, Professor of Wildlife Ecology at the University of Florida.
And I'm Dr. Will Goolsby, Professor of Wildlife Ecology and Management at Auburn University. We're both lifelong hunters and devoted scientists who are passionate about hunting, managing, and researching wild turkeys.
In this podcast, we'll explore turkey research, speak to the experts in the field, and address the difficult questions related to wild turkey ecology and management.
Our goal
is to serve as your connection to wild turkey science. Will, I'm pretty sure we pulled it off twice in a row.
What did we pull off?
We gave Charlotte 5 seconds of silence so that she has it for editing purposes. So if we sound particularly good on this episode, it's because we gave her that 5 seconds.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't have anything to do with you because we spent 10 minutes setting up your audio. It
is in spite of me.
He's going to sound really good because his office is in a bathroom.
Is it going to bother y'all if I'm in the bathroom?
That looks good. That's a good looking bathroom stall you're in.
For our audio only listeners, if you think there's a bit of an echo, now you know why. I don't know how we're going to do this with two Marcuses on the show today.
Yeah, this might be tough. And, you know, I have a hard time pronouncing your last name, Marcus. Thibodeau.
Yeah.
Thibodeau.
It's like Thibodeau, Louisiana.
Is that where your lineage is from?
No, we stayed up north. We didn't earn the X at the end of our name, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's where the X comes from.
Yep, that's what they say anyways.
So does that mean you're not true Cajun since you don't have the X?
I'm not. I'm a poser, I guess. I don't know.
So it's confusing to spell and you don't even get the credit of the X at the end.
Yeah, I don't even get all the good food, just a really tough time in third grade, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Well, guys, I'm really excited to have y'all. Eric Suttles, I guess you're the turkey coordinator for the eastern part of the state, and Marcus Thibodeau, you're the coordinator for the western part of the state. Is that accurate? I'll let you guys fill us in on whatever I missed there.
That was a strong introduction, Marcus.
Yeah. So we're going to talk Oklahoma today, all things turkey. We're excited to have y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're glad to be here. We have a lot of listeners in Oklahoma that are big fans of the show. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and I know several folks from Alabama that traveled out to hunt in Oklahoma this year. So definitely a popular destination. I was not.
We got to change that.
Well, you and I remember ask a certain person to get us on some birds out there this year, and he never got around to it.
I told y'all come on out.
I
didn't know I had to.
That was not on him. Will.
I actually wasn't talking about you, Marcus. I was talking about Mark. Now we're really developing a trend. Marcus.
Yeah.
Wow, this is going to get really confusing quickly.
The R squared value on this is increasing rapidly.
Y'all should have come out, man. It's been a banger of a season so far.
Yeah, so tell us about the season and what's been going on lately.
It's been a weird one. It's been the wettest April that Oklahoma's ever had on record. But they're harvesting a lot of turkeys. I think I looked it up yesterday. We do online check-in. Mm-hmm. So the number of birds checked in so far, we're over 7,000 already. And there's no telling how many got checked in this morning, but 7,300 last night when I looked. So.
And do you ask when they check those birds, do they have to indicate what subspecies they are? Or do y'all just assign that based on the hunt unit?
Based on the county that it's checked in at.
Okay.
So, like in Oklahoma, we've got the eastern turkeys in the southeast part of the state, along the eastern border. And then about 70% of the state is purely just Rio Grande turkeys. Okay. And then we do have a little bit of Merriams up in the panhandle.
Okay.
So when you say the wettest on record, is that statewide or is that in a particular area?
Statewide.
So y'all got 2 or 3 centimeters over there in the Panhandle.
Yeah, we got almost 5 inches last month. That's
In the Panhandle?
yeah, down where I live, we got almost 5 inches. That's a quarter of what we
Wow.
get a year.
So I imagine
Yeah.
the vegetation's responding.
Oh
Quite
yeah,
a
we
bit to
needed
that.
it. Yeah, we
Yeah.
needed it. It's green. It's looking good.
Holt's will flourish.
Yeah, and we had a bunch of wildfires this winter, so
Mm.
we needed that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So how many birds do y'all typically harvest in a season? And how far are you into the season right now at that 7,000 mark?
Right now we're at 7,300, like Marcus said. So, yeah, we're up. We're up quite a bit. But now we've seen these numbers before. We've seen them in 2017. So we're seeing what we experienced in 2017. And then we had like a reverse bell curve and it dropped down and now we're climbing back up. And so we're seeing very strong numbers. I mean, last year, so 2023, we were about 5,600. 2024, we're at 6,300. Now we're at 7,300. So we're starting to
How
see
much
this
is left in
climb.
the season this year?
We're 1 month, so April 16th to May 16th.
Okay.
Okay,
got
so
it.
y'all still have about 10 days left of the
Yeah.
day we're recording this. That's a
We'll
pretty
get
good bit of time.
that, end of the season rush. So all those guys that haven't harvested don't have to get made fun of.
So what do y'all attribute that higher harvest to? Was that reflected in your pulp per hen ratios from a couple years ago, or
It has been reflected in our pulp per hen.
okay?
We felt strong going into the season that we were going to have a pretty good hunting season based on pulp per hen last year.
Uh-huh.
And we're seeing that across the landscape of a lot of jakes being reported and a strong jake harvest this year also. So, yep.
Okay.
Good summer reproduction is definitely helping. So, and then just, yeah, overall, it's just sort of rebounding, So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're a little different than some of those eastern states, in Oklahoma, a bearded turkey is a legal turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So we do get, some jake harvest, and this year it looks like it's been a little heavy, but a lot of those, we call them turbo jakes, they don't have them little bitty beards, but they're like 4 or 5 inches, you know what I mean? Just
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
the ones that get you a ticket in Mississippi kind of a thing.
Yeah.
The super jake.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Well, we do have some states that are still bearded turkey over in the east too, but what I was just curious, like what's the historical peak? Like what was the highest harvest that you've hit? Do you
well,
know?
it's hard because we used to not make people check in birds,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like we don't. It'd be saying a number, but you'd have to take it with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? But like we used to be a 3-bird state, and with our decline, we dropped that bag limit down to 1, and we shifted the season back. And so that's really promising for this high harvest this year. Is that 7,300? That's 7,300 turkey hunters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's been really good for our recruitment, and guys, like myself, take your kids' youth weekend, shoot one opening first couple days, and then you got a month of season left, so you're taking new people. So it's
Yeah.
been pretty good.
Have y'all seen? I kind of wonder, like, where you're at, and kind of on the edge, I would say. And if you guys disagree, tell me I'm wrong. But the edge of like the center of the really big turkey hunting culture. You think about like in the classic states like Mississippi, Alabama, kind of being the heart of it. Georgia for sure, like the core of the Southeast. Have y'all seen the hunting culture in Oklahoma, the turkey hunting culture, like really take off
That's
in
why
recent years?
That's why OU joined the SEC, because we're going to dominate the turkey hunting also now.
Okay.
So
Fair.
No, it is. I mean, I think we're the edge of it. You go a little bit farther west, and those spring seasons kind of compete with bear hunting and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But Oklahoma, man, it's
Hobby fishing.
huge. Turkey hunting culture in Oklahoma.
Okay. And
And
what about
we're a
trends in
destination place.
non-residents?
I
So
was about
that's
to
pretty
ask that
localized. We get a lot of, especially out west. My other hat that I wear for the department is managing public hunting areas out west, and they're pretty big destinations for people to come get their Rio. Like
Yeah.
Black Kettle WMA that I manage. We've had 167 birds checked in so far off of that piece of property. So a lot of non-residents that come out there, and you get that feedback from the residents, but a lot of birds equals a lot of bird hunters. So
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of answer, we take game harvest surveys, which is what a lot of states do. They call hunters, and try to get a report. And so we have that data going back. We don't have the hunter check-in data that started in 2014,
Mm-hmm.
the online check-in statewide. But the game harvest survey data that's more historic and goes back. And we saw what most other states saw were early 2000s. 2005, 6. That was our peak as far as what we believe was our peak harvest and all that. So, and the culture has been strong. Turkey hunting culture in Oklahoma has been strong for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that we're just now catching up to those southern states. I think we've been a strong culture for a long time.
it's been pretty cool. When I came into the turkey part, a lot of the program stuff, like the big game or upland game or the turkey program stuff. Like in Oklahoma, when we had our decline start going on with the turkeys, we were met with just a lot of support from turkey hunters. It wasn't, we're going to tell you what needs to happen. It was, what do you need from us? The one bird bag limit, I mean, that was a result of, feedback on proposed rule changes. We were going to go from 3 birds to 2 birds. And the feedback from the public was, no, we're so worried about it and want to help. Let's go from 3 to 1. Like that's how concerned everybody was. And I know out west, a lot of outfitters and stuff like that, they're calling me saying, hey, we're not going to take any clients this spring season, for a few spring seasons. Like that's how serious they were taking it.
Wow.
So that culture part of it, that's pretty big when you're
Yeah,
making money on it. So
for sure. We've talked about this a couple times already, but would y'all mind kind of describing the changes that you see across the state in terms of, the ecosystems for those listeners that aren't as familiar with the geography of Oklahoma?
Now I'll talk about the eastern. So, we have the Washita National Forest comes in. So we have this mountain range that enters into Oklahoma in the southeast. And we even have Gulf Coastal Plain that comes into the very southern tip of Oklahoma. And so we have some alligators even in Oklahoma, in the far southeast of the state. And then we go into these mountains, and then we have timber companies and timber harvest and all that you would, see in the other southern states. And then we kind of, then if you travel north, it just is really pretty, called Green Country up there by Tulsa. And it's just, nice rolling hills and nice streams, and it's just beautiful landscape. And so that's sort of the eastern side. Just think of timber and some harvest, farming, and just, that's where you kind of get out east. And then that transitions into the cross timbers. So now that timber is going to give way to the Great Plains and to grasslands. And now you start to see more of if managed properly, you're going to have more of a savanna, less trees, more grass, and a lot of grazing.
And is that a precipitation gradient, Eric?
Yeah,
big
just
part of
driving
it
that.
is, yes.
Yeah.
yeah, so you go from like Eric's part of the state where he's at, 50, 60 inches of rain a year to like where I'm at. And it's
Which is like what we get here.
14 to 20 is what we get in a year.
Yeah.
So it's pretty drastic across the state.
Yeah, and or just for my information, I guess, on listeners, if they don't know, is that sort of showing the break in the distribution of the subspecies as well?
So we
Or
kind of are looking at that. We're doing we got several research projects going on, some statewide, some kind of regional. But we did a genetic research project. It's ongoing, but we're done collecting samples across the entire state to kind of look at that overlap and some hybridization areas and things like that. And we looked at habitat suitability between like easterns and Rios, and it's a lot of that middle part of the state. You can see that transition, from habitat suitability with kind of the hybridization is what's looking like. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of just fades out. There's no hard distinct line or anything like that.
mm-hmm.
So I bet you get a lot of pictures from hunters asking, "Is this an Eastern or a Rio?"
Oh yeah, or is this a Merriam's or
Yeah.
and it's so muddied up. But now we have some real genetic information that kind of shows exactly what percentage of birds from that county, like what percentage Eastern they might be and stuff like that. So that's all the phone calls I get all years from all the guys from the southeast wanting to come kill a true Rio out west. So we can back it up now and say it is a full-blooded one.
So you were saying the Merriams, where are they located at?
Very tip of the panhandle.
Okay.
It's a very, very small portion of the panhandle. I mean, exclusively on private property. So we get updates from the guys out there. They, sell a few hunts and things like that. And they're saying the Merriams are looking pretty good this year.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing a lot of jakes, kind of like what we're seeing across the state. So
It's coming off a big reproduction year, it sounds like.
yeah, they used to call it the Sooner Slam when we were a 3-bird state. You'd shoot all 3 subspecies in Oklahoma. So
That's really cool. I don't know about the sooner part, but
oh yeah.
Well, so going back to that transition that you see across the state, so is it are the Easterns and Rios relatively equal, aside from the hybrid zone, in terms of their proportion of the states?
No, the Easterns is really very small, and if you want the true blood Eastern, you really only have them in one county, and that's
okay.
McCurtain County.
Okay, so most of the state is Rio then.
Yeah.
Most of it's Rio and a lot of hybridization. Yep.
I gotcha.
And but more, but a tell fan, what you're going to get. I mean, if you're east of 69 Highway, you're probably going to have an Eastern looking bird.
Mm-hmm.
And 69 Highway is sort of a barrier and a break. There's so much traffic on that highway, and then that's just where urbanization and everything else is happening along that highway. It's preventing a bottleneck. I mean, the genetics isn't really crossing 69 Highway a lot, unless it's up and down streams, rivers, and creeks.
And the hybridization thing, that was just a small part of the genetic stuff. It was more of like you could call it like a conservation genetics project, looking more like, genetic isolation, looking where we need to focus corridor work, things like that. But cool, interesting part to put into
in Florida.
But y'all did see that highway was a major barrier.
Yeah, we're seeing some really major highways.
Flow.
And, yeah, gene flow. It's pretty crazy on that.
Isn't that crazy? Like you wouldn't think that even like a 4-lane interstate highway doesn't seem like it would be that big of a barrier to turkey genetics, but it is.
Might as well be the Pacific Ocean.
Wow,
it's crazy.
And that research will be coming out soon, the full report, and that'll be a really fun paper to dig into and look at when that gets fully completed. A lot of work by the biologists and our hunters across the state to collect the genetic samples and get those turned in. So I think we try to get every 77. We have 77 counties. We try to get genetics from every single county. I think we did a pretty good job. But
so did y'all ever have to bring in birds from anywhere else? Did y'all translocate around the state, or
how did that work? Is some of the hybridization from that? Do you think, or
some of it? Yeah. So we started our our relocation program in 1948. Well, actually,
Oh wow.
well, actually before that, because
Wow.
in
Yeah, that is
Oklahoma
long.
we have two stories. We have the relocation program for the Easterns and the relocation program for the Rio, and they're sort of different timelines and different stories. So in 1948, when we embarked on the relocation for the Rios, and we got 21 Rios that we trapped in the Panhandle and took them to Harper County, and then we added 87 more birds into Harper County. And Harper County became our main population. We grew that up, and then we trapped and relocated birds out of that county all across the western part of Oklahoma, and we did that in the 1950s and 60s, and then in the 70s we started taking that western population more central, 70s and 80s. And then the program for the Rio reintroduction wind down and stopped in 1996. And that's when we determined that there was no further relocation was needed, and the population had been and was being influenced mainly by recruitment at that point.
Mhm.
So
yeah.
many years, but starting way back 1948. And
They estimate from the records and stuff about 10,000 Rios trapped and relocated.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's really early. That's way before a lot of states started working on this.
It's pretty cool. I mean, in 1925, they thought that there were 0 turkeys in Oklahoma.
Wow.
and then the story's a little different for the Eastern. From 1934 to 1964, we pen raised birds, and we released over 5,000 pen raised birds for the Eastern, and these came from what was the Darlington Game Farm, and they grew them in the Darlington Game Farm and then released them. And after 30 years, they determined that the population had not become established as a result of these released pen-raised birds.
Mhm.
How many years did they try that?
30 years.
Or
Yeah.
30 years in a row? Not
30
I
years.
thought you meant like they did it a few years and then they looked 30 years later and there weren't any, but you mean they released
they
them
were
over and
trying
over.
throughout that 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, we get that
I was going
relatively
to say
common.
this. I was going to say this too. I'm glad you
We
thought.
get questions
too.
about this, and people ask, why don't we just release birds and do pen raised? And several people have been fairly adamant that we could do that successfully, but we keep running into this situation over and over where lots of states tried to do that, and in this case for 30 years in a row, and still didn't work.
Yeah. And so what happened was in 1969, we were in Oklahoma, we were seeing the success that we were having out west, the trapping and releasing. So we took that method to the southeast of Oklahoma. So we went to Arkansas. We got 16 wild birds from them for 8 million walleye fry.
I love these trades. This is like one of my
Yeah.
favorite things.
We got some
should be
good
making
ones.
notes on all the trades that went down.
I think I would take the walleye fry over the otters. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know
Didn't we
about
have
y'all.
one that was beavers?
We
Like,
traded.
there's been some odd trades.
We traded out west, Cheyenne, Oklahoma, with Cheyenne, Wyoming, Rios for pronghorn.
Oh, nice.
See, that's still a solid trade.
Yeah.
I mean, give
I'd
them the
get behind
walleye
that.
fry.
Yeah.
Give them the pronghorn. Like, I'm down with it.
And so we got that, and then we got a few more from Missouri. And from Missouri, we got 4 toms and 8 hens for some prairie chickens. We gave them 25 prairie chickens. So we ended up on the better end of that trade also. And
Yes.
so and so
See,
then
I'm
from
wondering,
that
what
28
were these states
birds.
thinking? Giving away turkeys for some of this stuff.
I would have liked to been in on that deal making. You know what I mean? Like,
I'll
you know.
raise you 2 toms.
oh, those
For
were some
16.
12-ounce decisions for sure. You know, like
What? Hold on. What do you give me for 12 striped skunks?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's like one turkey egg.
Yeah, future
Yeah.
considerations.
28
You know,
birds grew the population that we currently have in the southeast.
So-
So it's just a case study that the Penrith bird just can't really work. And the
Yeah.
traffic.
Well, it's a pretty
It's more-
remarkably strong one too. Like you tried to release birds for 30 years and it didn't work, and then you traded, a couple of pop rocks and marbles for 8 toms and whatever you said, 28 turkeys total, and that that reestablished the population. Like they're not even in the same realm of success.
yeah, that's becoming such a popular thing in Oklahoma, is people wanting to turn out pen raised birds, and like with
Yeah.
avian influenza, the last couple years, it's like, man, it's a good way to just ruin all the bouncing back that we've done with the wild populations, is introduce something like that.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing too is like look what they're starting to find out with the pin-reared mallards, and those genetics starting to pollute the wild genetics. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I'm all about keeping wild turkeys wild. I want to see those genetics.
Agreed.
Oh yeah, look at all those white toms getting harvested nowadays.
Yeah.
Where was that at 4 years ago?
Yeah.
It does seem to be becoming pretty prevalent.
Yeah. Lots of color phase things coming up now, aren't they? Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad you brought up the that case study about the pen raised birds, because we have gotten that pretty commonly, and folks just keep coming back to it, and we probably got 10 or 12 comments and DMs about it this time, how they didn't do it right. But yeah, that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. So y'all already touched on the genetic study that you've got going on. Are there any other research projects going on or recently completed?
Yeah, we've got several. We did a statewide, mainly like a habitat focused study. You might have seen some of the stuff recently, like on social media, some of the banded birds getting harvested,
Mm-hmm.
being a big deal. So, some banding, a lot of nest habitat stuff, trying to fine tune, nesting habitat across the state, with it being so variable, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
7 different eco regions make up Oklahoma, and what does nesting habitat look like for turkeys across that? How can we do better management, like with us on the wildlife management areas, for
Mm-hmm.
making better nesting habitat? So doing a lot of GPS collared hens, things like that. Got some other stuff starting, a lot of our hardest problem right now, like you were talking about in a previous episode, trying to just survey turkey numbers. How many turkeys
Yeah.
do we have on the landscape? We're
Mm-hmm.
we have surveys that we do for turkeys in Oklahoma, and it's hard. It's hard to be confident in those, really.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What
I was
about
just curious about the nesting when you're talking about the ecoregions, and what does that look like? Were there any stark differences structurally, or was it just the composition of plants changed? Like what did that look like? Do you have any insight on it?
Well, so the current research, our vital rates research that we have, you call habitat or our vital rates, started with the conversation with Dr. Elmore you had on here before, and it was what's the most important thing, or where is the main problem? I mean, are we getting birds bred? Are they making, are they laying eggs? Are the poults dying? And so it was really answer this broad spectrum of questions. And that's going to be wrapping up here pretty soon. They're just finishing up this last year of the field season now. And we split that research up into the Southeast and the Southwest, 2 extreme in Oklahoma, as different as we can get them. But they're both experiencing problems within the population. Once in the Southeast is sort of like struggling it's sustainable and it's sustaining, but it's not growing much. And the Southwest, we had the decline, and a noticeable decline. And so trying to answer what does that look like? And so, been pretty interesting things coming out of that. But so yeah, so that's sort of what that research is looking at. And I don't want to jump ahead of the research, but for the South, I'll speak of the Southeast, and Marcus can speak of the Southwest. But the one thing that's caught my full attention in the Southeast is the adult hen survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You didn't expect the numbers that we're expecting there.
Yeah, I think I saw in I don't know if the peer-reviewed version has come out yet, but in the thesis from the student that worked on it, I can't remember her name, but
Nicole.
Was it Nicole?
Nicole.
Yeah, Nicole. Yeah. It was in the low 40s, right?
It's low.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
And I think you mentioned in one of your papers there too, Marcus. I think you kind of looked at some of those rottle rates and put in one of your papers, I believe, and it's just, it's high, high mortality on those adult hens, and we can't keep a hen alive. How are you going to keep a nest going, right?
Right.
Yeah,
At 40%, it doesn't really matter what your nest success and brood survival look like. There's just not enough hens.
Yeah, I mean, when it's that low, when your hen survival is that low, you would have to be in the banner year reproduction to overcome it. And you can't have a banner year every year. So,
right.
We'll see most years
when we get all packaged up. There's a lot, as you guys know, there's so much information from the field work that it has to go back to the lab. It's got to be analyzed. It's got to be packaged up, and we'll see what it all says. Looking forward to what that says for the eastern part. That's one thing that has my attention. And then Marcus, what are you seeing in the southwest part there?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing predation. We're seeing a lot of re-nesting attempts, which, used to be a thing of, I don't know, I wouldn't say like debate, but you used to think a turkey wouldn't re-nest if she got, pushed off of her nest once, or she might re-nest a second time and that's it. Man, we've seen some pretty cool stuff, a lot of cool movement data with those GPS collars that has been really interesting. But, predation's always just kind of stuck out statewide. We were hearing about predation even before the decline became really popular, like with quail out west. Predation became a big thing. And it's something we've tackled head on. Only 3% of Oklahoma is public land. 90. If we're going to make differences in the state, habitat-wise or predation-wise, it's going to happen on the private property level. So, like myself, a few other wildlife management area biologists from over east, we started a trapping workshop, right? So we host across the state at different wildlife management areas. We host workshops to teach people how to fur bearer trap. Trap raccoons with coon cuffs. Put leg holds in the ground. How to do that, how to incorporate it into your habitat management plan or your, management plan for your property, fill that knowledge gap. And man, it's been super successful.
Nice.
A lot of interest in it, people wanting to learn about it. The workshops have all maxed out and had giant waiting lists. So it's made a big, big difference. You hear the stories from the people that attend the workshop and then call you a couple years later and say, hey, I might not have trapped everything, but I put out the coon cuffs, and man, I'm having some turkeys. Now, is that the silver bullet? Of course not. There's no diet pill for making birds again, but you got to do a little bit of everything. But I feel like it's a great way to get people started, because once they start trapping, they get into, now what else can I do? What other things can I start adding to it? So
I agree with that.
Really
That's
like
something. Yeah, well, Marcus and I think we've had that conversation on the air before, that certain things that we didn't think were really high return on investment, we've started to appreciate more and more, even in spite of that, because I think, the more you get people out there on the land during times of the year where they're not just hunting, not just trying to extract the resource, but they're trying to give back, I think that just snowballs.
I think it's a mindset, right?
It is.
Like they change into the mind, this isn't about taking now, it's about giving back, and starting that somewhere
and investing.
Is good.
Yeah. It feels like more of an investment.
And it sounds like you guys probably have some of this situation. We certainly deal with it a ton, where a lot of the hunting community don't own the land they hunt on. Like, they're on private, but they don't have the right to go in and manipulate habitat at the
Yeah.
landscape level. So that's a tool that most of those people in those situations have at their disposal.
Yeah, I would guess a lot of y'all's private land hunters are probably leasing ranch rights, right of trespass on various ranches and things like that.
Yeah. Just, hunting leases and things like that.
Yeah.
I've never heard it called right of trespass. That's hilarious.
I
Usually
was
it is
throwing it back.
trespass.
I was throwing it back. A
I'm
little
surprised he said ranch instead of farm.
Oh, man.
If there was one thing I could get right, I mean, I've already insulted their hunting culture today, so their turkey hunting culture. So I want to make sure I get that part right.
I'm so naive, I didn't even realize you insulted them.
Hey, we got some good ones, man.
When you said that, I thought it was the snarky remark about the Sooners that you were talking about.
Oh, well, yeah, man, that's strike 3 for me. But
man,
Will, your video's getting kind of grainy.
I'm just gonna fade into the background here and disappear from the rest of this episode. But
he was talking about that right to trespass, and I see a WMA boundary sign in his office.
Oh, don't pay attention to that.
Man, he's just like broadcasting it to the world.
I know. I'm at our headquarters. I'm gonna go grab a warden real quick. See what we can...
I think the statute of limitations is up on that one, but I'm not sure. But Marcus, what about, you talked about y'all are doing the trapping workshops. What are y'all doing as far as like technical assistance with landowners for habitat stuff, and like maybe a better place to start is like, what are the major habitat challenges that turkeys face in Oklahoma?
So, like we keep saying, it changes from east to west, but
right.
We do host workshops and field days educating landowners. Like, so out west, we do a lot of cedar tree removal.
Mm-hmm.
So roosting areas is really important. And like Dwayne Elmore, he and I did a lot of work together and learned a lot from him. He's a great quail hunter, by the way.
Mm.
He can outpace the dogs.
I believe
quite
it.
the walker.
I've watched him do that with mountain quail one time.
Oh, it's nuts.
He bird dogged him out.
I keep telling him, I'm like, man, slow down. My dogs will stop when they smell those quail. Like you don't have to ride them. But we did a bunch of research at Pack Saddle, one of the WMAs that I'm over when I first started with GPS collared birds or backpack turkeys, and looking at roosting habitat utilization, things like that. And we found that roost tree availability in the western part of the state is the biggest limiting factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we don't have roost trees, it's that they get so choked out by cedar trees and other woody vegetation.
Oh, I love that you said that, because I've been thinking a lot about that. That
the turkeys physically can't pitch up into the trees.
Yeah.
And so we've done a ton of work. I mean, over $1 million through NGO partners and stuff like that since 2017, after we figured this all out, and restoring riparian areas, increasing roost tree availability, and it's been a game changer. I mean, I've got a picture that I use in every one of my PowerPoints, and we'll have hen turkeys and, turkeys moving into these project areas where we've never seen turkeys before,
mm-hmm.
with the equipment still there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the return on it is immediate. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
So that's our big push. And then you can maintain that with, prescribed burning.
Yep.
Because if you would have, if you don't do that, you're going to have to exclude those areas from your prescribed burn. Otherwise, the cedar trees are going to ladder fuel up and destroy your cottonwoods. So we've been doing a ton of that, and it's been remarkable to see the response to it.
Yeah. And with the cedars, are you primarily relying on mechanical removal just followed up by prescribed fire to maintain?
Yeah. I mean, we all have our different preferred method. Like I just do this straight up mulching. We go in there with grinders and just turn it into mulch.
Mm-hmm.
Other guys like Thad Potts, he's biologist over at Canton WMA, and it's been a huge success story out west. The thing was so covered up with cedar trees, you literally couldn't walk through parts of the WMA, and he's been stacking them, and we've been going in and burning them later, and like cut, stack, and burn, and
Yeah.
It's been awesome. It's turned into one of our most popular WMAs, top 5 in just the last 5 years from all the work he's been doing out there. So
Yeah, in that
huge
case, you've
example.
not just enhanced habitat for turkeys, but you have actually taken what was previously unusable space, is what you described. So that was a hole in the landscape that they could not use for anything, and you've changed it back into turkey habitat. And especially
Oh
if you're putting
yeah.
fire in there, it could potentially be high quality. So it's gone from they won't even use it or walk through it to high quality.
Well,
Yeah.
and it isn't even just that area. If it sounds like to me, those are anchors for roosting. So the birds are probably anchored there, and now all the space around it is usable because it's close enough to a roost area. Is that?
Yeah, and when we were having this talk about like the multi-state project we tried to get going, I was just kicking myself. It's like, man, I wish we could have had some GPS backpacks on birds when we were doing these huge
Mm-hmm.
projects
Oh yeah, that
and
would
just
be so
seeing them
insightful.
come in and break up. Like even in our winter roosts, we'll see that, like Roger Mills County where we're at, 10 years ago, the winter flocks would be, just giant, handful across the whole county. And now it's just a bunch of smaller ones, 100, 200 birds only, just all over the place. And I would like to say it's because of opening up lots of more roosting areas, but, who knows? But
Yeah.
that project would have kind of answered some of that.
Well, that
Yeah.
roost issue, I'm glad you brought that up to circle back to it, because I think that the same thing happens in eastern forest, especially like with a privet invasion into hardwood forest roost sites that are traditionally used or have been for a long time, and then you get a dense privet mid-story in there, and they just quit receiving any use. It's basically the same thing.
And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Dwayne could talk more about it because it was his project and stuff, but, the thermal suitability for that habitat was a big part of it too.
Mm.
That when turkeys were seeking, like thermal refuge, Oklahoma, western Oklahoma, we can get up to like, 115 degrees in the summertime. So that thermally suitable habitat, really important. And when you have cedar trees in your riparian areas, you have a lot of top cover shade, but if there's no wind to come through there and kind of cool it off, you're
Mm.
just making an oven instead of
Oh,
having the
I
opposite
see.
effect. When they're cut out, you can get some of that breeze through the bottom of it and make it a cooler habitat.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we've seen it with quail too. So I'm gonna try not to talk too much about quail, but that's my first love.
Quail are just turkey poults, right?
And so to kind of add to that question, habitat in the eastern part of the state, it's timber stem improvement.
Yeah,
It's your traditional what you
yeah,
would see across the other states. If you're walking, I always kind of if you're walking on pine needles, you need to do something.
mm-hmm.
If you're walking on deciduous leaves, you need to do something, right? We got to have more diversity um, as we walk through the forest than that. So pretty simple,
Yeah,
on what your needs are there.
Mm-hmm.
At least a starting point, where you might want to start. So, um, so that's what we see here. And then in the central part, it's at cedars too. The
mm-hmm.
cross timbers is just being choked out by cedars. What's left of the prairies or what's left of usable space is being choked out by cedars. So it's not a home; it's a cedar, and so got to stay after the cedars.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I imagine a lot of that, Eric, is due to, inadequate use of prescribed fire. So what are y'all seeing as far as trends in prescribed fire use? Is that something that has, I mean, I'm sure it's not back up to where you'd want it to be, but are you seeing a positive trend in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, think so. OSU does a great job of with their extension services, OSU Extension, to get the message out to those people. It's a risk, and you got to find the individuals that are willing to put in the work, the labor, the time, and a little bit of risk. We are protected under the law to do prescribed fire. There is protections if you follow the steps. So we're a prescribed fire happy state. I mean, we're allowed to do it. but yeah, just trying to find it, trying to find those. And so we do have associations that help with that. And then within the Department of Wildlife, we also have private lands biologists to also help and assist that. And so almost every region, uh, Northeast, Southwest, all has a private lands biologist that
Nice.
can come out to your property and help you with uh, the plan, the funding, the implementation, help you get it going. So
That's very good.
I know I was aware of uh, the prescribed burn associations. I know it seemed to have really taken off in Oklahoma, and I did an
Yeah.
online prescribed fire training, and that opened my eyes to that because we used a resource from your state
Oh
to
yeah,
connect
John
people
Weir.
to their
Was that
yeah
John Weir?
to
Yeah.
to try to connect people to that network, I guess, of PBAs, regardless of which state you're in. There's a tool online that we linked to that helps people find one local to them. But when you look at that, it became evident to me those things are all over Oklahoma, and it's just been a
Oh
really
yeah.
successful model. It seems like.
And it's and I'm part of the one in our county, and man, it's awesome to see it take off because once you get enough guys into it, we get in a situation now where if we're burning on someone's property, we're calling their neighbor and telling them, hey, we're going to be over here burning this field. You better get yours ready. We're going to burn it too. Like we're over here, and that's going to be a problem during wildfire season. So let's get it taken care of right now.
Yeah. And have you seen receptiveness of those people
Oh
increase,
yeah, I mean,
especially
and
with some of the recent wildfires y'all have had?
yeah, we've had all these wildfires, and it's just raised the awareness of the need for prescribed fires, really.
Mm-hmm.
And
and one day, here just lately, March 14th was the windiest day in Oklahoma history. As I know, we have meso net stations across the state. That's like um, places to check weather, right? And call them meso net stations. And so, 63 of those stations all hit greater than 58 miles per hour. And on March 14th, and we had a wildfire outbreak
Like a
that day.
statewide
Obviously.
tornado.
oh man, out west it was like 75, 70 plus mile an hour winds when our wildfire started out there.
Oh my God.
So you can imagine the kind of when we talk about a wildfire out west, with blue
That
stem
thing's
that's
moving
waist high.
fast.
I wouldn't want to be within a mile of that thing.
Oh, they've documented some of those head fires moving 70 miles an hour, and it just the amount of acreage they can cover. A couple years ago, we had the Smokehouse Fire come out of the Texas Panhandle into Oklahoma, 1.5 million acres in 2 days. 3
Right.
days, 1.5 million acres. It was insane.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
reminds me of some of the historic writings that I've read of, some of the Plains Indians and the buffalo hunters and stuff talking about those prairie fires and
Yeah, this is where it would have happened at.
yeah,
It's,
exactly. And they talk about jumping in like a buffalo carcass or a stream or something like that as it goes over them.
and that's how much the landscape's changed. So, like our fire department that I'm on, uh, when it first started, they used to go fight wildfires with gunny sacks. They would dip them in a barrel of water, and literally
Yeah.
beat down the fire to put it out. And now we have to use these big military trucks that we're chasing them in and spraying water, hundreds of gallons of water at a time. It's nuts.
Yeah. What about Marcus in the western part of the state? Are y'all doing like, some patch burn grazing too?
Yeah, so like on the
You see
wildlife
landowners starting
management,
to adopt that?
yeah, I mean, so where I'm at specifically is in the middle of the what would have been the Dust Bowl. So guys that are on family land, they know a lot more about soil health than I do because their families invented that.
They lived it. Yeah.
Yeah, shelter belts, no till planting, and then a lot more of this patch burn grazing stuff. We do a lot of it on the areas that I manage, and it's awesome. It makes great habitat. I keep coming back to quail because a lot of that it's the same thing that we're talking about, right? That habitat for brooding when it comes to quail or turkeys, that nesting habitat, it's all the same
Yeah.
when you break it down. So
One thing that I've always wondered about patch burn grazing is if it's better at creating some bare ground between the plants than just fire alone. Have you
I think
noticed any
so.
differences there?
I think it's really good for like our woody control, our
Uh-huh.
woody like that. Woody encroachment in the Great Plains is the fight, right?
Yeah.
Trying to fight that woody encroachment. And so now that we're doing a lot more growing season burning with cattle on pastures, it's a great way to put weight on cattle. And it's also just, man, when you talk about getting rid of that woody component or limiting it to some favorable percentages, it's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been great.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and to Will, you bring that up, that bare ground. Our summer burns in the eastern part of the state provide much better bare ground and better poult, turkey, whatever, quail, better habitat for a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Dormant season burn has its purpose and it's a tool, but once you get the rains that we're getting, you get some vegetation growth. It's going to grow up pretty thick,
It
pretty
happens
quick.
so fast. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Where if you do it in the summertime, you get that bare ground and those a slower plant response
Mhm.
over time, and it's actually more favorable plant response, honestly, too, more forbs. And you get, and it lasts longer. It lasts in all winter, all month, several months. So summer burning is really important in the timber part.
Mhm.
Go from central to western, or from central to eastern part of the state. Very
Yeah,
important.
for
Where
sure.
that cattle grazing, very important from central to western.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Simplifying it a bit, but
I was curious along these lines, just thinking about over a longer time period. Have you guys, or I guess I'll ask you a different way, have there been any dramatic land use changes or anything over the past decades in Oklahoma, and what are those?
Yeah, I mean, in the western part of the state, when you talk about agriculture, right? So like, kind of just shifts with what's making money. A lot of the stuff that's going to go to cotton, that's we're kind of seeing that in some areas where you might have a wildlife management area or a outfitter property, something like that, and then it becomes almost isolated, like cotton fields all the way around it. So just kind of that agricultural change, and like right now, it's kind of uh shifting back. A lot of this ag land that used to be planted to wheat and things like that, it's going back to native grass. People are planting it back to grass. The agriculture where I live at, Durham, Oklahoma, they used to call it the broom corn capital of the world. And we used to have pheasants and prairie chickens, and everybody used to plant a lot of, sorghum, things like that. And they don't
Sounds
now.
amazing.
You know what I mean? It's stuff like that it's kind of changed slowly over time to where nobody really notices it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
When you talk to those landowners and they say, "Well, my properties look like this for forever," and it's like, man, it never looked like that 50 years ago. It's just happened so slowly you didn't notice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think has
Shifting
driven that
baseline.
conversion back to pasture or grass? Is that are they switching over to beef from row crop, or they're
No,
just
it's just
taking row crop out of production?
like out where we're at, winter wheat. I mean, you're just really planting it for hay. So if you can graze smarter on native grass, it's saving you a lot of just money
Okay.
and equipment and things like that. I mean, winter wheat, I don't know, it hadn't been profitable in a long time. It's just been getting planted for subsidies, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I think guys are just wising up to it and grazing smarter.
Yeah.
What about in the eastern part of the state?
I mean, I don't know that our practice have changed much. I mean, we didn't in the central part of the state. Of course, we're seeing some of the shift. You're starting to see what we used to be farms or ranches that was in production are kind of being broken up and not going so much in production. And then you're starting to see the cedar encroachment and these other things because they're not in production quite so much. In eastern, where we had the mountains and the trees, it's all pretty much been timber and has been timber, and it still is timber. Some of those practices have changed. They were trying to at one point try to put cattle on the bottom and grow pine trees on top. So you have there's probably still some of that going on, but I think I see less of that. What's happening is when as recreation and the need for recreation and the price of property for recreational use has gone up. A lot of the property in the eastern part, especially the southeast, has gone recreational. So they're buying this property not to make money off of it, but solely for recreation. And so they are taking some of that timber, what might have been a timber harvest, they're taking that out. They're not harvesting it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or what they might have had cattle underneath and timber on top, now they don't have the cattle.
Mm-hmm.
So you are seeing that shift because it's shifting over to recreation, deer hunting, turkey hunting. Deer hunting is the primary driver, obviously, for that property.
We're seeing the same thing, on rural land for sure.
And so it's just that need to educate people that even though you're buying that for recreation and for hunting, don't forget the management. It might do you some good. You're may not get rich, but it's probably going to do you some good if you can cut some pine off of there, get some timber off there, open that hillside up a little bit. Like I said, if you're walking on pine needles, we need to do something.
Not just feed corn to coons the whole time.
Good stuff.
And then we have the oil and gas industry, a lot of windmills coming. I mean, that's Marcus talked about the windmills, but that is also changing the landscape across Oklahoma.
Well, Eric, I know you mentioned before the show started that you had some interesting stuff related to weather. I was just curious if you could, talk to us about that a little bit, like changes in weather, extremes in weather.
Right. So, Oklahoma definitely is a state with extreme weather. Everybody's seen us on the news at one point or another with our tornadoes and our events. And so the weather definitely drives our turkey population locally. When we have these local events, it's going to affect the turkey population, and so we do need, so the importance of that is we need habitat connectivity so that when we have these events, there's a source sink population dynamic going on, in these events. But 2010 was extreme and persistent flooding, kind of what we're seeing this year. But 2010 we had flooding, and then 2011 came, and we had a lot of storms in the beginning in the spring, and on April 14th we had 33 tornadoes, and then that rainy period of 2010 2011 gave way to the heat of the summer of 2011, and that was the driest on record. Triple heat digits. We had 60 to 70 plus days of temperature over 100 degrees in that summer of 2011. And so just some of the highlights of 2011 that broke the records and still hold records today is the lowest temperature was actually in 2011 at minus 31 degrees. We had a 24-hour snowfall of 27 inches in 2011. We had the highest wind gust of 151 in 2011. We had the largest hailstorm of 6 inches in 2011. We had the most 100 days, the most days over 100 degrees. We had 101 days in Granfield, which is in southwest Oklahoma. So southwest Oklahoma had 101 days above 100 degrees.
So that
above 100 degrees.
I thought Florida was bad.
That was in 2011, and then
we get that
I'm
dry.
kind of wondering how are
it's
their
a dry
turkeys?
heat though. It's a dry heat.
It's that humidity that gets you.
Yeah.
Well, it might be the negative 31 happening in the same year as 100 days over 100.
God.
Like I'm sitting here wondering how are their turkeys?
Oh, you got to be tough to live in Oklahoma.
27 inches of
You gotta
snow in
be a jack
24
of all
hours?
trades.
6 inches of hail?
No, the hail was 6 inches.
The hell was 6 inches. The hell ball was 6 inches
It
around.
wasn't
right?
6 inches.
I was
the
thinking
hell balls were
the
6
balls were
inches
6
big.
inches.
No,
The
so they
size
don't
was
call
6
that.
inches.
So they have they'll say golf ball size hail.
Yeah.
And baseball, they call that gorilla hail in Oklahoma. That's a real thing. You'll see it. I swear.
That's a softball size.
No, we call it
Bigger than
gorilla
softball.
hail, bigger than a softball.
Gorilla hail.
We don't even have a ball that big. We'll call it a gorilla.
Yeah, that's our unit of measurement.
So if a turkey gets hit by one of those, it's dead.
Yeah, I mean, or they abandon their nest, right? That's
I mean, that would be a prudent thing to do.
That's-
I mean, I think I might be dead if I got hit by a 6-inch hail ball.
man, you talk
I
about some
mean-
of those things when they're coming, they'll go through people's roofs. I mean, it's
It's
crazy.
like a cannonball.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can have a hailstorm that comes through like out west, and it'll be really bad like that, and it looks like someone's disked up the earth. You know what I mean? You'll just see the stretch of ground that looks like it's been disked up.
That's wild.
And then in 2024, just last year, we had the most tornadoes with 152 tornadoes. And, some of those aren't super large tornadoes, right? They're fairly localized. But if that tornado hit your property, it's probably going to affect those turkeys
Mm-hmm.
in that particular year. Now, they may bounce back and come back pretty quick, but it could have a regional effect. And then the flooding can have a regional effect.
Sure.
It can be negative or positive. If you happen to be in that band where there's a lot of rain and the creeks are coming out of their banks, that's probably going to be negative. But rain outside that band, may not be so, don't have that much rain, but it's going to be a positive because you're going to have vegetation response.
Mm-hmm.
And, grasshoppers and everything else respond to that, positively. So, but if you're in that band of 10 plus inches of rain, that would be pretty
Too
negative.
much of a good thing.
So that's what we deal with Oklahoma a lot with our turkeys, just the extreme weather.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be super frustrating. You can do everything right and still have, a random event like that come through.
Gorilla hail just wipes it all clean.
Gorilla hail.
That's a real thing, man.
We were talking about how important overhead cover was for hens when they're nesting. That's a
need some helmets for them now.
understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah, when y'all are banding them, you should just fit them with a little helmet and some shoulder pads.
That's right.
Well, but that does bring up the good point, though, of habitat. And habitat is a lot. And if everybody closed their eyes and kind of picture what habitat looks like, those that hunt or manage turkeys in Western Oklahoma are going to see a totally different picture than those that manage or hunt turkeys in Florida, or what that picture looks like. But habitat is we talk about nesting and brood cover and all that, but don't forget that habitat is also helping protect these species from these events also.
Mm-hmm.
It gives them shelter.
Yeah.
And if they have shelter, they're resilient, and they will will themselves to survival.
Yeah.
If they have to. So habitat and good habitat plays a big role in them being able to handle these extremes.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I think that's a very important point, but I'd add
Absolutely.
to it that I think that's why diversity is key, because you never know in any particular year what cover type might be most important, and that might change based on random weather events. So,
Which don't seem that random. Oklahoma.
Yeah, I don't know what an average year looks like. It's just,
Yeah. Yeah. Pull something out of the hat.
the people
no,
and the
it's
turkeys
gorilla
in
hail.
Oklahoma are built different.
I don't know. I've met some of y'all guys from the Southeast come out there chasing Rios. I don't know.
I don't know if you're saying that as a good thing or a bad thing, Marcus.
I just, like you're saying, depends on the day, I guess. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
nah, they've all been super cool. Man, but like you were saying, the turkey culture thing, the passion of the guys from the Southeast part of the country that come out to finish their slam or
Mhm.
Or at least that's what they say when they're asking you where to go on the public property, right? Is this is the last bird I need for my slab, you know?
Mhm.
But passionate, man, and they do a good job. They'll call us after they've had their hunt and talk about the habitat and things like that, and just things that you don't usually hear from just like a guy that's not ate up with turkey hunting
Yeah.
or anything really. Paid a
Right.
lot of attention to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool.
What have we not asked y'all about? I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. I've
Have you
learned a
guys
lot.
given some updates on Marcus's turkey hunting adventures?
You're talking about mine or
Yeah,
yours?
yeah. Has there been any more mishaps, or have you gotten one yet, or what?
No, I think I've hung it up. I was going to go to Michigan and still could, but I'm going to be brood rearing here soon. So I think most of my mate is going to be, you know, as a pseudo hen. So, which I'm super excited about, but our season's closed here. I haven't been able to get back to some of the other states I hunt in commonly, and I have some access in Michigan, but I don't think I'm going to get to go this year because of that. But I'm not complaining because I've got to do something that I've dreamed of doing since I've read Illumination of the Flatwoods.
Mm.
Well, that's just more of an excuse to come out west next season.
We have
Yeah.
to make it happen next year.
Yeah, we say that
100%.
every year.
Well, I'm starting to know more and more people in Oklahoma for some random reason. It seems like
Yeah.
every other month somebody's moving out there for a job. So
I know.
I have no excuse now.
Yeah, I hope y'all enjoy having Mark Turner out there. He
Oh
left
yeah, he come
Florida
out.
to come out there.
Yeah,
He
y'all
he
got a
got
good one.
he already come
Yeah.
out to Pack Saddle. I think we're gonna do some prescribed burn research plots out there, and I think we
Great.
already have a field day that he and I are supposed to put on. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
he's good.
he sent me some pictures. He and his wife tagged out, and I think those were their first Rios too. So
Yeah, I think Chitwood was with him, wasn't
yes, yeah, he was. That's right.
he? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
y'all got a lot of good folks working out there.
yep.
We do. We do. Very passionate, very talented folks. So
Cool. Yeah, I guess anything else that we forgot or that you want to leave the audience with?
the only thing I could think of, with this being the Turkey for Tomorrow thing, is we've had Jason come to our headquarters here pretty recently. The CEO,
Mm-hmm.
Turkeys for Tomorrow. He's come to Oklahoma. Met with all of our high up guys, telling them about the organization and looking forward to kind of hopefully working on some projects with Turkeys for Tomorrow, getting them
Nice.
in
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
Yeah, I heard that they were potentially getting in on something that Mark was starting up.
yeah, I think some of
So
that.
hopefully that works out.
I know that Jason was pretty interested in the trapping stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and he and I got to hang out at the Western Turkey meeting,
Mm-hmm.
do a little fishing. That dude fished me under the table, man.
Uh-oh.
He can fish. But no, great guy. I'm looking forward to it, and whatever way they end up working with us, because it'll happen. You can just kind of tell. So
Yeah, good.
Good.
Well, I appreciate y'all's time. I learned a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, guys. Fun talking to you and hearing about what you're dealing with over there. The status of turkeys is really good information.
we've got a lot. We've got a lot of research still going. We're very committed, to find out how we can better manage them, what the cause is. If it's death by a million cuts in many ways, but do our part for turkey science. And so we have our current research going on, and we have another one on baiting and nest survival. That's going on now too. Then we have one about how can we better count birds. Got that one starting up. Which one did I miss, Marcus? We have another one. But a lot of research going on, not just for turkeys either. We're looking at species all kinds of species of black bears, turkeys, quail, pronghorn,
Mule deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're putting a lot of emphasis on research in Oklahoma.
Very good.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's evident, and it's been evident from our discussions with coordinators in lots of states, is you guys are dedicated to this and trying to find answers to be stewards of the resource, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. Yep. Glad y'all are out there doing it.
That's the best job in the world, man.
Agreed. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody out there for listening. We appreciate all the support and feedback and everything. And we're trying to make our way around the wild turkey range to, support folks in various places and get information to our listeners there. So
yeah,
thanks for all the support out there.
Oklahoma's slogan is "Make turkey habitat great again." So that's what we're doing.
Maybe we'll make that the title of the episode.
There we go.
There you go. That's right.
I'll throw out there too, Marcus, since you kind of brought this up, Marcus Lashley, that is. But it being turkey season and turkey's on everybody's mind right now, I have been getting a ton of messages and emails, and I appreciate all those. And there's been lots of good advice and suggestions for episodes. Sorry, have not gotten back to y'all on a bunch of those, but give me some time. I'm trying.
Yeah, same.
Not ignoring those.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate your time, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yep. Thank y'all. Wild Turkey Science is part of the Natural Resources University podcast network and is made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow, a grassroots organization dedicated to the wild turkey. To learn more about TFT, check out turkeysfortomorrow.org.